I'm Khadija Baden, Miss Cayman Islands Universe, and I know everyone is talking about masks. It's not something we're used to, but our government encourages us to wear homemade masks when we're out in public. Because the coronavirus spreads through droplets, when an infected person sneezes, coughs, or even talks. Medical professionals who work with sick people every day are at a higher risk of infection than you or me. Right now, there's a worldwide shortage of medical grade masks. We need to save those types of masks for the doctors and nurses who need them the most. Homemade masks are not medical devices. They won't necessarily prevent the person wearing them from being infected, but they do have some ability to prevent the person wearing them from infecting other people. Masks also stop you from touching your face, which we do more often than we think, and is one of the ways that infection can occur. Homemade masks won't protect you fully, but they will offer another measure of prevention. The most important thing to remember is that masks will only work if they're used in combination with social distancing and washing our hands regularly. When you're in public, wear your mask. Stay 6 feet away from people at all times. Don't touch your face, and wash your hands frequently. By practicing all of these measures, together we can protect our community. For more tips and advice, please visit www.gov.ky/coronavirus.
Hi, I'm Jade Parker. We understand that our government's new requirements to wear a homemade mask out into public spaces will be an adjustment for most of us. It's not something that we do every day. A homemade mask can help to prevent the spread of COVID-19 if worn correctly. Here are some tips to help make it easier. Masks should fit snugly but comfortably against the side of your face and be secured with ties or ear loops. You should be able to breathe through your mask, although you may find it a little hot because of your own warm breath. Keep the mask secured over your nose and mouth. Your nose should be fully covered. If it isn't, then your mask will not protect you. Avoid touching the front of the mask because this is where any contagious droplets may have landed. Instead, when taking the mask off and on or adjusting it, only touch the elasticated strings or the string around the top of your head. When removing the mask, put it on a clean surface that you will later disinfect. As an example, don't put the used mask on your kitchen counter while you wash and clean your groceries. For more tips and advice, please visit www.gov.ky/coronavirus. Adjusting to this new norm can be difficult, where social distancing has become key, especially in our community, where getting together is how we show love for friends and family. The virus uses us to transport it around our community. Imagine you are asymptomatic and didn't know. Imagine you gave the virus to your friend who lives with their elderly grandmother. Imagine your friend had it and wasn't aware. What if they infected your brother or sister who has an underlying health condition? This is how the virus spreads. But we can stop the spread by continuing to social distance, limiting public gatherings, and not visiting other households. We can save lives. Remember, social distancing is Cayman kind. For more tips and advice, please visit www.gov.ky/coronavirus.
Dear parents and guardians,
we care deeply about our students.
And we understand the challenges you may face
during these unprecedented times.
We want you to know that we are committed to ensuring
that your child's education continues
and that you are not alone.
We are doing everything that we can
to make sure
no child
is left behind.
But to do so,
we need your help to get connected and stay connected
with you and your child. So reach out to us, speak to us
about how we can best support you
and your needs.
Working hand in hand with you is the only way to secure our children's future.
We are in this together.
We are in this together. Sincerely, your school leaders.
Khadija Baden, Miss Cayman Islands Universe, and I know everyone is talking about masks. It's not something we're used to, but our government encourages us to wear homemade masks when we're out in public. Because the coronavirus spreads through droplets, when an infected person sneezes, coughs, or even talks, medical professionals who work with sick people every day are at a higher risk of infection than you or me. Right now, there's a worldwide shortage of medical-grade masks. We need to save those types of masks for the doctors and nurses who need them the most. Homemade masks are not medical devices. They won't necessarily prevent the person wearing them from being infected, but they do have some ability to prevent the person wearing them from infecting other people. Masks also stop you from touching your face, which we do more often than we think, and is one of the ways that infection can occur. Homemade masks won't protect you fully, but they will offer another measure of prevention. The most important thing to remember is that masks will only work if they're used in combination with social distancing and washing our hands regularly. When you're in public, wear your mask. Stay 6 feet away from people at all times. Don't touch your face, and wash your hands frequently. By practicing all of these measures, together, we can protect our community. For more tips and advice, please visit www.gov.ky/coronavirus.
Hi, I'm Jade Parker. We understand that our government's new requirements to wear a homemade mask out into public spaces will be an adjustment for most of us. It's not something that we do every day. A homemade mask can help to prevent the spread of COVID-19 if worn correctly. Here are some tips to help make it easier. Masks should fit snugly but comfortably against the side of your face and be secured with ties or ear loops. You should be able to breathe through your mask, although you may find it a little hot because of your own warm breath. Keep the mask secured over your nose and mouth. Your nose should be fully covered. If it isn't, then your mask will not protect you. Avoid touching the front of the mask because this is where any contagious droplets may have landed. Instead, when taking the mask off and on or adjusting it, only touch the elasticated strings or the string around the top of your head. When removing the mask, put it on a clean surface that you will later disinfect. As an example, don't put the used mask on your kitchen counter while you wash and clean your groceries. For more tips and advice, please visit www.gov.ky/coronavirus. Adjusting to this new norm can be difficult, where social distancing has become key, especially in our community, where getting together is how we show love for friends and family. The virus uses us to transport it around our community. Imagine you are asymptomatic and didn't know. Imagine you gave the virus to your friend who lives with their elderly grandmother. Imagine your friend had it and wasn't aware. What if they infected your brother or sister who has an underlying health condition? This is how the virus spreads. But we can stop the spread by continuing to social distance, limiting public gatherings, and not visiting other households. We can save lives. Remember, social distancing is Cayman kind. For more tips and advice, please visit www.gov.ky/coronavirus.
Dear parents and guardians,
We care deeply about our students.
And we understand the challenges you may face
during these unprecedented times.
We want you to know that we are committed to ensuring
that your child's education continues.
And that you are not alone.
we are doing everything that we can
To make sure
No child.
no child is left behind.
But to do so,
We need your help to get connected and stay connected.
with you and your child. So reach out to us, speak to us.
About how we can best support you
and your needs.
Working hand in hand with you is the only way to secure our children's future.
we are in this
You're in this.
together.
We are in this together. Sincerely, your school leaders.
Khadija Baden, Miss Cayman Islands Universe, and I know everyone is talking about masks. It's not something we're used to, but our government encourages us to wear homemade masks when we're out in public. Because the coronavirus spreads through droplets, when an infected person sneezes, coughs, or even talks, medical professionals who work with sick people every day are at a higher risk of infection than you or me. Right now, there's a worldwide shortage of medical grade masks. We need to save those types of masks for the doctors and nurses who need them the most. Homemade masks are not medical devices. They won't necessarily prevent the person wearing them from being infected, but they do have some ability to prevent the person wearing them from infecting other people. Masks also stop you from touching your face, which we do more often than we think, and is one of the ways that infection can occur. Homemade masks won't protect you fully, but they will offer another measure of prevention. The most important thing to remember is that masks will only work if they're used in combination with social distancing and washing our hands regularly. When you're in public, wear your mask. Stay 6 feet away from people at all times. Don't touch your face, and wash your hands frequently. By practicing all of these measures, together, we can protect our community. For more tips and advice, please visit www.gov.ky/coronavirus.
Hi, I'm Jade Parker. We understand that our government's new requirements to wear a homemade mask out into public spaces will be an adjustment for most of us. It's not something that we do every day. A homemade mask can help to prevent the spread of COVID-19 if worn correctly. Here are some tips to help make it easier. Masks should fit snugly but comfortably against the side of your face and be secured with ties or ear loops. You should be able to breathe through your mask, although you may find it a little hot because of your own warm breath. Keep the mask secured over your nose and mouth. Your nose should be fully covered. If it isn't, then your mask will not protect you. Avoid touching the front of the mask because this is where any contagious droplets may have landed. Instead, when taking the mask off and on or adjusting it, only touch the elasticated strings or the string around the top of your head. When removing the mask, put it on a clean surface that you will later disinfect. As an example, don't put the used mask on your kitchen counter while you wash and clean your groceries. For more tips and advice, please visit www.gov.ky/coronavirus. Adjusting to this new norm can be difficult, where social distancing has become key, especially in our community, where getting together is how we show love for friends and family. The virus uses us to transport it around our community. Imagine you are asymptomatic and didn't know. Imagine you gave the virus to your friend who lives with their elderly grandmother. Imagine your friend had it and wasn't aware. What if they infected your brother or sister who has an underlying health condition? This is how the virus spreads. But we can stop the spread by continuing to social distance, limiting public gatherings, and not visiting other households. We can save lives. Remember, social distancing is Cayman kind. For more tips and advice, please visit www.gov.ky/coronavirus.
Dear parents and guardians,
We care deeply about our students.
And we understand the challenges you may face
during these unprecedented times.
We want you to know that we are committed to ensuring
that your child's education continues.
And that you are not alone.
we are doing everything that we can
To make sure
No child.
No child.
no child is left behind.
But to do so,
We need your help to get connected
and stay connected.
with you and your child. So reach out to us, speak to us.
About how we can best support you
And your needs.
Working hand in hand with you is the only way to secure our children's future.
we are in this
You're in this
together.
We are in this together. Sincerely, your school leaders.
afternoon, everyone. I'm Donna Bush with today's coronavirus press briefing. So glad you could join us via our channels as well as Radio Cayman. We go first to Reverend Donovan Myers for today's prayer.
Loving, faithful, and gracious God, we pause to say how truly thankful we are in this season for the reminders of your presence with us. In the midst of dark times, we see your light expressed in the regard and support of our families, in the generosity and concern of our neighbors, in the commitment and service of retail providers, in the compassion and diligence of health workers, in the wisdom and care of our leaders, and in the beauty of the earth and the renewal of your creation. God, we affirm that you are a safe place to shelter and are ready to help when we need you. So today, we acknowledge that we do need you. Grant insight and foresight to those who make policy and who direct our efforts towards containment, eradication, and recovery. Give grace and added strength to those who serve daily on the front line of this crisis. Provide your healing touch to those who are infected by the disease and all those who are affected, who live in spaces of worry, uncertainty, anxiety, fear, and despair. Help all of us to keep persevering even when we get tired of doing what is good. And may each of us find comfort and challenge in the relationship that you so generously offer through your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Myers. We now welcome our panelists, His Excellency the Governor, our Honourable Premier, and the Honourable Minister of Health. With us in studio are the Chief Medical Officer, the Director of HMCI, as well as our sign language interpreter. On Zoom, we have the Medical Officer of Health, as well as members of the media. We go first to Dr. Lee.
Good afternoon. It's now been 4 days since we last gave a presentation on these numbers, so we are presenting large numbers today, but those do represent 4 days. You're used to having the results more or less every day, apart from over a weekend, so I really do hope that you bear that in mind. So with that, we have 1,182 results to present today. That number is largely work done at the Health Services Authority, who've worked throughout the holiday weekend, and I thank them for that. 94 of these are from the Doctors Hospital, which are, but they were not working on Sunday and the holiday Monday. Of those 1,182 results, there are 17 positive people who were all found through the screening program that was instituted coming up to 3 weeks ago across these islands. Of these 17 screening people who were positive, 2 were from Cayman Brac and 2 are from Her Majesty's Prison Northwood. The average daily positive rate, which I calculate by taking the number of people who are positive, locally positive on the day, and divide it by the number of tests performed, is on average 1.44%. Since we started screening, that figure has varied on a daily rate between obviously 0 and a high of 2.57% on one day. As you know, we are working through our phases of testing. We've worked through frontline health, and we're now well into frontline workers and have done a considerable number of supermarket workers and have started in the construction industry. The majority of the prison has been tested already. His Excellency the Governor will talk more on that point later. Our total positive numbers to date are 111, of which 3 are in Cayman Brac. The number of symptomatic people are 12, number of asymptomatic 43. We have no people admitted with COVID disease. 55 have recovered. Over this last weekend, there were 10 people seen in the flu clinic between the 15th and 18th of the month. Flu hotline calls were relatively high at 62, but of those, 52 were not related to any symptoms. It was people trying to find out their results, finding out how to get screened, when they would be called, and so on and so forth. So more administrative calls. I wanted to advise you that the Health Services Authority, as we've had before, needs to have a scheduled maintenance day, and that will be this week, Thursday. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. We're going to go straight to Ralph Lewis from the Caymanian Times. Ralph, please go ahead. Questions for Dr. Lee?
Hey, good afternoon, Dr. Lee, and thanks for the report. Hope you had a good weekend. This question was created before today, so it wasn't based on the results for today. But just have a question regarding the quality of the tests. Are these tests, would you say that they're 100% accurate, or there's a degree of error with the testing?
The real problem, Ralph, is really whether you actually can get enough viral particles into the machine to test. So once you've got it to the test, the machine is very accurate. The problem is whether the swab that you've done or whatever sample you've done has enough viral material. So that's the first problem. The second problem also comes at the limits of detection because, as you know, I've mentioned before, we multiply up the number of viruses, so we get noise at the end. In general, well, the PCR test is an exceedingly accurate test and reliable test, but the issues often arise around the sample taking side of things rather than necessarily the test itself. Additionally, if you, for example, keep looking at a sample and it's gone through a lot of freeze-thaw cycles, if you're like doing repeated things, that can also cause degradation of the material you're testing. So there are lots of technical aspects that can cause failure.
Okay, thank you very much.
I think that's essentially why we've talked about before pairing it with the immunoglobulin test, you know, using the combination to get a better view if you want a more complete picture. But at the moment, it is the most accurate test to say whether you have the disease today that we have.
And so we can be very comfortable that these figures are very near accurate.
But we can, but it's just a snapshot in time. So at the moment they were taken, they were as accurate as they could be. So the next day, that is history, and we need to do it again to find out the real answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. We go now to Reshma from The Compass.
Thank you, Donna. Good afternoon. Dr. Lee, just a quick question on the 2 cases from Cayman Brac. Are they asymptomatic or do they have symptoms?
I think it's fair to say, Reshma, that all of the people that are in the screening program have either had very tiny symptoms, so they didn't think there was any point telling anybody else. There have been 1 or 2 of those that on questioning, they said, well, I did have a cough, a week ago, but nothing else. Didn't think there's. So they're all essentially well people, and that includes the 2 people that are on the BRAC. They weren't presenting with any symptoms. They were just part of the enhanced screening program because the BRAC is continuing to screen. They're trying to get the numbers of people they've screened up as we are working on that too. So, but being a smaller population, they're able to get the figures up quicker than us.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, given the 2 tests in Cayman Brac, are there any plans to change the restrictions or make any recommendations in relation to how things are being operated across on the sister island?
I think it's really, you sort of triggered my mind to just reiterate how really important it is to keep up with the advice we've been giving and we're consistently giving to Little Cayman, to Cayman Brac, and to Grand Cayman about hand hygiene, keeping your distance, wearing face masks when you're around people, and respiratory etiquette. We really have to drive those messages home because that is the way you're going to protect yourself and your loved ones until we have a vaccine or some sort of other better treatment than we do now.
Okay, just a quick point on the masks and them being mandatory. Can you say why it's only specific to inside buildings and public spaces as opposed to making it a general wear masks everywhere you go?
I think if you're out in the open and you're able to keep your distance from people, then the chance that you're going to get enough droplets on you that they would become viable is very, very slim. We just also have to be practical about this, not just because we live in a warmer country, but just in general. You have to make sure that people will comply with you. But if you're out in the open and you're away from other people, I don't feel there's any risk at all.
Okay, and also in terms of the enhanced testing program, we've seen Health City advertise that they're now doing drive-through testing. I'm just curious as to why they are not being included in the enhanced testing program so that we have a wider scope of testing and we get through that process faster.
They are included. That's why they're talking about the drive-through. So I'm not sure at what stage they're at, but they've very much been involved in all of the conversations around combining the abilities of all the 3 labs to work together, about the ability of physically taking the swabs themselves. They've been very much involved at every stage, and I appreciate their constant support for this program and for our work towards trying to reduce the threat of COVID-19.
Okay, just from my understanding then, the tests are not, the tests that are taken at Health City are added to the HSA total because you separate HSA and Doctors Hospital.
Exactly. So the Health City don't currently use the PCR technique at all. So they don't have a polymerase chain reaction machine. So they will take the swab. They are also, either they have started or they're about to start the first step of deactivation of the sample before it's then transferred on to HSA to run through the HSA PCR machine.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all from me for Dr. Lee.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Reshma. Dr. Lee, we have some questions from April Cummings at Radio Cayman for you.
Dr. Lee, this one is way early in the game to ask, but I did want to bring it up anyway since I'm hearing a lot of people discuss it. I realize that we're a long ways away from inward traffic into the Cayman Islands again, but I wondered what that might look like pre-vaccine. Is it the same as the kind of stuff we're talking about today where you would have a mandatory quarantine for 2 weeks, et cetera? Or is there some other version of reality in which people could find, I'm thinking of people who may own properties here or spend part of the year here, whether there's any pathway for them that doesn't involve quarantine in a government facility?
I mean, clearly this is a government decision rather than a health or public health decision. But certainly I was party to a conversation with CARICOM the other day, and they are talking similarly about this issue and how to open up their borders. And they're trying to find a consensus approach. And it's largely around, it continues to be around not only testing people, but also having a quarantine or isolation period before people are released into the community. So it seems that although somewhat impractical in some circumstances to make happen, that's what they're talking about as the way to move forward.
So if I had the money and flew in on my private jet, I would still be subject to a 2-week quarantine today. But what the region is looking at is something still similar along those lines, unless something changes dramatically.
Those were the conversations that were being had. Yes, you'd still need to do that. Clearly, if you're doing it out of choice, then I'm guessing that you would be charged for that. I'm also wondering, it's very possible that if you're coming to stay for some time to enjoy Cayman, then there may be the option of perhaps having a more salubrious establishment that you might stay in, but this would all be payment. But this is just supposition because no decisions have been taken.
Understood. And to be frank, that's what I was kind of asking for, just an idea of what the possibilities might be. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, April. We're going to go back to Ralph from the Caymanian Times for one final question for Dr. Lee.
Yes, Dr. Lee, just one more question. Out of the 17, there were 2 prisoners that you said tested positive. Were there the 15 essential workers?
They weren't all essential workers. There were some essential workers. There were some construction workers, and there were some people who had been in contact with the healthcare services. So a whole mixture, but all part of the screening program. Not the samples weren't taken because they had any symptoms relating to COVID.
And were any of those travelers?
No, there were no travelers reported
Okay.
here. Oh, sorry. If I could just clarify that a bit. I mean, it's getting a little bit long away for travel histories, but the contact tracing is ongoing for a lot of these. As far as I'm aware, there's nobody with a travel history. But it could be that in a couple of days, when the contact tracing has been complete, we may find a travel link, but I'm not aware of that at the minute.
And in your mind, what does that say for the community spread?
I think we are where we were on Friday. I don't really see we're any different because of that percentage figure I gave you. I think this is merely a function of the amount of screening that we're performing, which is a huge amount at a national level. And I think it's really a message for all of those countries around, and not only the small ones, but perhaps the bigger ones, that this disease hides away, as we've talked about before, and is probably a lot more prevalent than people believe it is. And I think that's an important take-home message.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Lee, I do have one question for you. The BRAC cases, do we know where those are at yet as far as community transmission, travel history, frontline workers? I
have had a very quick chat with Dr. Belasami, and it was purely a chance when that they were picked up through the screening, and I wasn't alerted to any other special features, but the contact tracing is ongoing.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Lee. We can now go to our panel, beginning with our Honorable Premier.
Thank you, Donna. Hello, everyone. I think the message today to be taken, or the lesson to be taken from the message delivered today, is that the virus is still very much about us, and that it is across the community. It is not isolated to particular areas, although the prevalence of it, or the incidences of it, are still very low. And all of those who have tested positive now are asymptomatic. So that I think the lesson in that particular bit is that just about anybody that you are talking to or you are dealing with may well have the virus. Just because they are not coughing or sneezing or exhibiting any other symptoms does not mean that you should not behave in the manner that we have been speaking about ever since this began, in terms of the need to physically distance yourself, to wash your hands regularly, to wear a mask when you are in public places and enclosed public places, and you can't distance yourself sufficiently from other people as to avoid creating a risk. I think it also underlines very much the importance of the strategy that the government has adopted and is sticking to, which is that the reopening of the economy must be done in a very controlled and managed way. For if we don't, we are likely to run the real risk that the virus does take off throughout the community, and that all of the measures that we have employed and all the sacrifices that we have made will be for naught. And that is why, although some are still saying that we are overcautious, that is why the government is proceeding in the way that it is. I know quite a few people are happier today than they were this time last week, because they get to go back fishing, they get to go to the beach for a walk and a run and a swim. And we hope that if the results continue along the current trajectory, that we will in due course be able to move from level 3, where we currently at, to level 2 in a few weeks. But again, we will be guided by those results. I don't know that I have, I should say that the construction sector is being tested, has been the subject of testing over the course of the weekend and will continue to be so. And over the course of the next week, 2 weeks, I expect that we will see significantly more traffic on the road and significantly the resumption of a number of construction projects. NRA were at work over the weekend and have made some very good progress. So the economy is reopening, but deliberately, fairly slowly. And we want this to be a success. We do not want to suffer the setbacks that many other countries who have reopened have had to go back into some measure of lockdown. We'd like, when we come out of the lockdown completely, that we don't have to go back there. Although, for the foreseeable future, we will all have to continue to practice the social behavior that has now become common. And I think the world over, that is going to be the case for some time to come, until a vaccine is found, or, which seems increasingly unlikely, the virus peters out. In other places in the world, they are now worrying very much about the second wave, which they expect will come in the autumn and the winter. We are hoping that by that point we would have effectively eliminated the virus here and would not have to deal with that. Obviously, the reopening of our borders is something that will pose significant new risk, and is something that we are not contemplating at this time doing anytime soon. But at some point, we will have to. And so that is one of the things that is exercising our mind as we continue to work to try to find ways to generate the economic activity to replace the loss of tourism over the next, probably over the balance of this year. And that leads me just to quickly say that the House will meet tomorrow, the Legislative Assembly will meet tomorrow to consider a number of bills generally relating to the financial services industry. I am hopeful that we will get through the business, all of the business tomorrow, but in the event that that doesn't happen, we'll have to go over to Thursday, and we would probably then not have a press briefing, but have to push it to Friday.
Thank you very much, Honourable Premier. Your Excellency.
Yes, okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I mean, as the Premier has said, I know 17 cases may seem somewhat concerning, but it is over 4 days, and we have to sort of bear that in mind. And over 1,100 results completed. So, I mean, that's outstanding work by everybody doing our testing, and particularly HSA, who worked incredibly hard. So my thanks to them as well, and to Doctors Hospital. It also means that in terms of testing, we continue to be doing really well. We're over 10% of our population. I think we're up to number 8 in the global league of testing per head. So that is all something to be very proud of. And all the cases that we're getting are asymptomatic. So this just shows that our screening process of frontline staff is really important. And this is what is putting us in such a good position to test, trace the contacts and isolate to stop further spread. So I would say, as the Premier has, I think, very clearly underlined as well, we have some local transmission, but we do not have widespread community transition, and we want to work very hard to keep it that way. But that said, this is a complicated, dangerous virus, and we do not have all the information about it. So I think my main message is, as we open up the economy, please don't let your guard down. It is really important to keep going with the social distancing, the basic hygiene, staying at home as well. That message remains there unless you're out in the local economy as we open it up. Avoiding contact with people outside your household is still the best advice to avoid this being spread. So again, like the Premier, I believe our strategy remains on track. Suppression level 3 now, and we just have to watch how the testing goes over the next couple of weeks. Just a quick word on the prison. I know that will be a concern, but I do want to pay tribute to the incredibly fast and effective work of the prison director and his staff. They had a plan in place, a very detailed plan, and put that into action. And again, a prison-wide screen testing program. And this is exactly why we're doing that, so that we can make sure that we are maintaining the welfare and safety and well-being of everybody at the prison, the prisoners and our prison staff. So I just want to make one other comment about evacuation flights, which is to say that the flight to Manila for Saturday is now completely sold out. That one is full. There is no planned flight at the moment to Miami, but there will be further flights to Miami. That will take people out, but won't at the moment bring people back, because we are at capacity in the isolation facilities. We continue to work on BA air bridges, as I said last week, on India, as I said last week, but no progress, I'm afraid, on Jamaica or Nicaragua at the present time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you, Donna. Good afternoon, everyone. Grand Cayman, Cayman Brac, and Little Cayman and our Caymanian diaspora listening in. I'm reminded, and I could only repeat what Reverend Myers said after hearing Premier's or Dr. Lee's announcement about the 17 new positives. Reverend Myers said, even if we get tired of doing what is good, and we should continue to do so. We have now gone through 2 holiday periods, Easter holidays, Discovery Day, since this started. And by the way, happy birthday, Cayman Islands. 517 years old. And it's approximately 2 months now since we started this lockdown, and many birthdays, weddings, funerals that we wish you could have been, which could have been celebrated or honored so much differently. But we are still here, and we can take it different by staying alert and using the information provided to the best of our ability to keep safe during this pandemic, whether we are suspicious about it being here or not. Today I read a scripture from Romans 15, 1-6 and verse 13. We who are strong ought to bear the failings of the weak and not to please ourselves. Each of us should please our neighbors for their good, to build them up. For even Christ did not please himself, but as it is written, the insults of those who insult you have fallen on me. For everything that was written in the past was written to teach us, so that through endurance taught in the scriptures and the encouragement they provided, we may have hope. May the God who gives endurance and encouragement give you the same attitude of mind towards each other that Christ Jesus had, so that with one mind and one voice you may glorify the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of this Holy Spirit. May the Lord add a blessing to the reading of this holy word. Shout out today to Rotary Central Cayman Islands. The appeal we did for blood donations yielded 93 prospective donors. This information was turned over by Rotary Central Cayman Islands to the blood bank. Thanks to the Rotary Cayman Islands and Ms. Zelta and the team. Thank you very much for all the work you do in this area. I believe a government is elected with the premise of opportunity and equality, with the hopes this will lead to prosperity and success and upward mobility for all. And through hard work in our country, Life should be better for all regarding of social class or circumstances. As a government, we provide guidelines and measures for COVID-19. But the thing about freedom, and this is a free country, we can make choices of whether to follow the regulations set out about social distancing or not. If we did not take the measures we did to delay and flatten the curve, we would be singing a different story. Oh yes, everyone was so scared in the beginning, and so were we. All was very concerned, especially the first 3 weeks. And we were seen as heroes here in some light, and all were proud to be Caymanian. And once some perceived that the government had made most, and not all, but most of the right moves to keep us safe, based on the medical advice received, the fear that should have been the instinct of committed countryman or woman became the fear of one that government was looking too good. Yes, looking too good, and in words of some said they needed to poke holes in the government's apparent success and try to score cheap political points to confuse the nation. And we all know in times of confusion there lies opportunity. These people study Machiavelli and in a field of personal psychology. It's a trait centered on interpersonal manipulation, unemotional coldness, and indifference to morality. It's a personality which sees a person so focused on their own interests, they will manipulate, deceive, and exploit others to achieve their goals. An example is one who will lie to cheat to get the throne. They are subtle and unscrupulous, cunning, so they can get ahead. We know the easiest thing is to do is to complain and find fault, but harder to agree and being a part of the solution. I thank everyone that went on their knees praying and fasting for us. And we know the spirit of jealousy is alive and well. This is one of the commandments. God knew our tendencies. Please let us don't go back to full lockdown phase. Thank God, indeed, we are not like some countries trying to play catch up. My eye is on the neighbors where only 100,000 deaths seems to make people comfortable. So in a world when everything was so fuzzy, and most was uncertain, and where persons thought the corona bear was the cause why we didn't do so well, was it early lockdown, social distancing, limiting the number of persons congregating? Was it restricting days by surname, closing our ports? Was it prayer? Was it scripture reading? Was it fasting and prayer? Was it a nation bonding together and adhering to the stay home in many different languages? Was it washing your hands frequently? Did you know hand washing alone, if done up to 10 times a day, cuts down the chance of catching the coronavirus by 50%? I believe it was all of the above and more. We are a blessed country, and we ought to thank God for his blessings and mercy on us. I don't mean to impugn anyone's motive, but imagine during one of the most serious times in our history, with so much unknowns, we have a political movement aided by some in the blogging world. Imagine if they were fully committed to helping this country instead of hurling slurs and attempting to have everyone believe the government has made every wrong decision known to mankind. No one in the world has done everything right when it comes to COVID-19, and yet some boast about the things they would have did differently. They are nothing else but Monday morning quarterbacks and spectator critics' actions of decisions of others after the fact, using hindsight to assess situations and specify alternative solutions. Recently, we have said that public health is very important and we are saving lives, but we know this means we are keeping you from a job. And it's easy for persons to become skeptical because people want to feed their families, and we appreciate that. Believe me, we know this is inconvenient for many, including us up here. But we must have empathy for all of Cayman, as we don't have one person to waste in Cayman. Everyone is essential. But life and livelihood has to work together with health and economy. I hope everyone appreciates that. I would like to use this opportunity to share some health and safety measures that the Ministry of Health, in consultation with Public Health Department, has developed to prevent local community cases and to facilitate a phased, safe re-entry of Cayman's workforce. The COVID-19 testing increases as we start to see local transmissions numbers come down. Employers will need to consider how to manage safely the process of returning employees to the workplace. Whether indoors or outdoors, workplaces will be required to comply with government and health guidelines of social distancing and infection prevention practices to ensure the safety of their workers and the general public. Prior to the phased reopening of workplaces, businesses and employers will be required to put in place health and safety measures of which employees, visitors, and customers must allow. This system should include detailed monitoring plan to ensure compliance with health and safety measures, designated officers to assist in the implementation, coordination, and monitoring of the system at the workplace, where employees can continue to perform their work by telecommuting from home. It is recommended that they do so until we have the all clear. This will mean staggering work hours, split shift hours, virtual meetings, social distancing in vehicles, among other measures. Other important steps will include the requirement of personal protective equipment, masks, and the use of good personal hygiene. I pray each of you are now back at work, continuing to be safe, practicing social distancing, and frequent hand hygiene measures. We need you out there rebuilding our economy, but our first priority is that you all are safe and healthy. I thank you, and God bless.
Thank you very much, Minister of Health. We go first to Radio Cayman's April Cummings for questions for the panel.
Thank you very much, Donna. I'm not actually sure if this question is for His Excellency, because I think the prison falls under his remit, or whether it's a medical question for Dr. Lee. But I'm trying to understand, and forgive me if it's a dumb question, how people who've been in remand since last year could be testing positive now. I'm trying to get an understanding of how that might have happened.
Sounds more medical to me.
Sorry about that.
Dr. Lee's coming for you.
As I was having a little nap there. So the fact of the matter is there is some movement around the prison. So clearly the staff move around the prison. The staff are of all different types, whether they be, they're not just the guards, it's administrative staff and so on. A lot of the prisoners also leave the prison to go to appointments, medical appointments, appointments at, I'm guessing, and I don't know all the details, but appointments at courts and so on. So there has been some movement, and there will always be movement. There are medical staff that goes backwards and forwards. I'm not saying that it happened in any particular circumstance, but the nature of this disease is that we know that it can transmit really easily. We know it can transmit in a hidden fashion. So there are lots of different routes. There are also objects that I know enter the prison, some should and some shouldn't, and it's possible that objects might also carry the condition because we know it can live on hard surfaces for some days. I know it doesn't fully answer your question, but we're not surprised that in a lot of seemingly closed communities, it manages, the virus manages to get there. The reason that we're extra concerned and putting in a lot of effort to try and eradicate and suppress the condition in these closed environments is clearly because they're potentially more vulnerable.
That answers the question. I really asked how it could have happened, not necessarily how it did happen. So that really helps a great deal. My second question is actually for the Premier. It's been a few months now, and I don't know about you, but I have a little bit of COVID-19 fatigue in some ways. And I'm wondering whether you have concerns about whether people are maybe getting complacent or starting to tune things out as we've come along here. And if that's a problem in terms of how high risk we think we are, so that we may not be as careful as we could be.
Yes, April, you're absolutely right. That I have no doubt that is happening. It's very difficult to maintain the level of vigilance that we had employed over any period, but particularly when things seem to be going quite well, when we have no one sick of COVID-19 symptoms in the hospital, and when the numbers of positives are percentage-wise very, very low. I have no doubt there is growing complacency, which gives us great cause for alarm, particularly as we reopen the economy. And that is why we continue to emphasize the messages, particularly those about social distancing and hand hygiene and the wearing of masks in enclosed public places where you can't be safely distant from other people. Those are our key messages that they need to continue to become more and more a part of our social norms, because this is going to be around for quite some time. We're in a very, very good place and very, very fortunate that so few of our people seem to be getting very sick from this disease, but that is not a basis for complacency. We have so far been able to keep the virus away from the vulnerable, the elderly and the infirm, because we've seen around the world, even as near as Bermuda, what does happen and how tragic the consequences are once it does get in to those vulnerable populations.
One more, I was asked to raise the issue in case you weren't aware of it, or the panel for that matter. There are folks teachers, for example, who are finishing out the school year, who are from overseas, and a number of them are planning to go home. So that I don't know about the government schools, but the private schools in particular are starting to, they're trying to plan ahead for the fall, and they're having concerns about their ability to staff if the borders are still closed and we still have very restrictive measures. So I was just asked to draw to your attention the concern they have that it may be very difficult in terms of the education of our kids if we don't have enough teachers.
Yes, it's something that we're very cognizant about because anyone who leaves will have to undergo a period of isolation when they return. That would really be the only restriction.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you, April. I do have some questions from the public. April's last question leads me to my first question, which relates to work permit holders who we learned last week are allowed to now come back and bear the cost of their own quarantine for 2 weeks. Does this apply to those working in the tourism industry, or are those persons, and if so, are those persons allowed to come back and then change to another job or industry?
No, one of the reasons, I'll tell you, one of the reasons why we're insisting that work permit holders or their employers pay for the cost of isolation is part of the filter that we're trying to put in place to ensure that those who come back, who are on work permit, actually have a job to come to. We don't want people coming back here hunting for jobs. And that's why we're encouraging people who do not have jobs. Just as recently as just now, someone messaged me asking if I thought she should go back because she worked in the tourism industry. And my answer is yes. It is unlikely, given the kind of work you were doing, that you're going to be able to get a job again in the short term. So we want people to come back who have jobs, who will help to revive the economic engine of this country, because we're going to have to hold our own without the tourism bit for the tourism part of our economy for some time. And so we do want people who are going to come back and generate economic activity to do so. It's going to make it easier, believe it or not. And I hear the noise myself, but I've said more than once over the many years I've been involved in government that one of the things is counterintuitive, so people don't want to believe it. But every time work permit numbers fall significantly, Caymanian unemployment has increased proportionately, significantly. Over the many, many years, I've looked at the graphs, and it's because when there are more people on work permits, it's a signal that there's more economic activity. no employer in his or her right mind goes and hires people to do nothing just so they can pay them. So it's a sign that the economy is expanding and growing. And the more people there are here, the more people there are that are buying goods and services and putting money back in the economy. So we don't want to depopulate the Cayman Islands now, but we want only people here who actually have jobs and who are going to help to generate economic activity.
Okay, thank you, Premier McLaughlin. The next few questions relate to fishing and the BRAC. BRAC gatherings are still at 25, even with the number of positive cases that we've just heard about there, whereas in Grand Cayman it's still two. And some people just quite frankly don't understand that. So if you could explain why that is and give some clarification, we'd appreciate it.
Well, nothing has changed just because we have one set of results that says there are 2 more positive cases in the BRAC. The BRAC is at level, I say it's like 1.5. It's not 2, but it's not 1 either. It's like 1.5. So the risk, it's about risk. It is the assessed risk is much lower for the BRAC. In Grand Cayman, there are still significant numbers of people here who have the virus. Today's results bear it out. I mean, it's not alarming. I think we're at like 1.4% of those tested testing positive, but it's not the same as Cayman BRAC by any means at all. And so the reason for when we had lots of debates about this when we were designing level 3 with Dr. Lee, arguments back and forth. The reason why the restriction is still to 2 people is that the objective is to keep people from having social engagements with people outside, with many people outside their household, trying to prevent the gathering together in groups, even friendly neighborhood get-togethers and chats and drinks. We're not at the stage where we think we can safely do that without risking an escalation in the spread of the virus. That's why that is still imposed. Similarly, why we have not increased the numbers of persons who can attend funerals or weddings, because you're trying to prevent the gathering together of groups of people in social circumstances.
This leads me back to the word complacency that was mentioned earlier by someone else from the media. There are a lot of people who are becoming complacent and they have no regard for the law, quite frankly. Will the police be upping their vigilance in a community to address persons who may, not be following the restrictions that are currently in place and remain in place?
I'm sure the police will do their best. But as we open up the economy and there are more and more people who are permitted to be on the road, it becomes more and more difficult for the job for the police becomes that much more difficult. And we're all keenly conscious of that. But I'm sure the police will continue to do the excellent job they've been doing over the course of the past couple of months.
As it relates to fishing in a boat, is that part of the 2 hours of exercise for persons going in a boat, or is that just for shoreline fishers?
No. Fishing, period, is not considered as exercise in this thing. It is a completely standalone activity, and fishing is permitted from 5:15 a.m. in the morning until 7 p.m. at night. There's no restriction on the time.
This is just for reiteration of what's already been said. Of course, 2 children, are they included? Are the two people in the boat included children? Are children included in that? 2 people in the boat only?
2 people is 2 people, whether they're small people or big people.
Yes, sir. Okay, and leads me to my next question. How far out are persons allowed to go on their boat if they want to fish in Cayman?
As long as they don't go out of territorial waters, they're fine.
Just 12.
But if you're going out of territorial waters, you have to clear customs, which means that when you come back, you'll be subject to 14-day isolation period.
Right. And that outside would be beyond 12 miles.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very, very much for that. Just clarifications on everybody's part. We go now to Reshma from The Compass. Reshma, please go ahead.
Thank you, Donna. It took me by surprise there. My first question goes to the Premier. Now, over the weekend, a document was being circulated from government outlining phase 3 of the suppression plan. Can you say, and as you know, humans are impatient beings, when will we have the other phases and the breakdown of what they look like? Can you provide us with an update on that?
Well, we're working on those. So what I think would be in contemplation the next time round, which isn't here, would be the opening out of more of the retail facilities, because most of those are still limited now to curbside pickup and delivery. Again, they'd have to ensure, though, that they can meet the social distancing requirements. And also, what would be in contemplation would be open air restaurants and possibly bars. So those are the sort of things that we're talking about at this stage. Again, and I just want to emphasize this, subject to how well this opening goes, as long as we are not seeing significant spikes in the number of positives or clusters, discovery of clusters as we go about the screening exercise. You know, we're in a very, very fortunate place because we are now actually actively hunting down the virus, trying to find where it is, as opposed to responding to hordes of sick people turning up at the hospital. We want to continue that process for as long as we need to prevent the spread of the virus right through the community.
Okay, thank you for that. Just out of curiosity, do you have a timeline when we can see the full document, or is it that you're working through the phases as it goes?
Yeah. Well, no, we're still working on it. So each of the phases has a minimum of 2 weeks. So we if all goes well, we would expect that 2 weeks from today, well, 2 weeks from yesterday, because yesterday was Monday, 2 weeks from yesterday, we would move to the next phase, assuming all goes well. If, as I said, if we have significant causes for concern, then this phase we'd either hold here for longer, or if something terrible were to happen, which caused major alarm, we could revert to more significant suppression again. So it's not an automatic. We go forward every 2 weeks. It depends on how well we are doing.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Now, I think it would have been a week or 2 weeks ago, can't keep track of the days now, when the Deputy Premier talked about a tourism plan being developed on looking at how we're going to take the country forward, that industry in particular. Can you provide us with an update on the work that is going on for the plan, and what, if anything, can you share about what it looks like?
No, I haven't been briefed with respect to that, but what we can do is we can have the Honourable Minister come back on and discuss it in the next few days or so.
Okay, great. Now, you talked about the LA opening resuming tomorrow. You had mentioned that virtual assets is one of the pieces of legislation that will be coming. Can you share what other pieces of legislation or the key ones that you think the public should pay attention to that will be debated?
I'm afraid I don't have the list in front of me. They're all generally aimed at meeting EU requirements arising from the concerns which they had, which in part has left us on the EU blacklist. So we've been working through those with the EU, and that is what these are aimed at. The only sort of brand new bill is the virtual assets one. The others are essentially tweaks to other pieces of legislation. But I don't have that detail with me. Normally, I have my head around all of these things, but quite frankly, I just haven't had the capacity to really focus on that in the way that I usually do.
Okay, I understand. Okay, I'm gonna just quickly go to the governor now. Mr. Roper, the prison falls under your responsibility, and I'm just curious if you can share with us what the plan is for managing prisoners who will be brought to the prison now that we have positive cases. Are they going to be screened? What level of planning is to be placed in terms of that specific area?
I mean, just on sort of responsibility for the prison, just to be clear that I have responsibility for the security aspects, but the prison is a devolved matter, so it is Minister Rivers and the ministry which is responsible for the administration of the prison. I don't know whether Dr. Lee wants to comment on that specific aspect.
Okay.
The prison is using has not changed for the last few weeks. They've already had a very COVID-focused health security approach to managing it. So anybody arriving at the prison goes into a, not quarantine, but an area which is segregated from the rest of the prison and then is released after 2 weeks. As you know, we've been screening all the prison staff and the prisoners themselves, and we will be. It was always our intention to continue that screening program because it's not somewhere that, as we mentioned, not a static case. So it's always been our intention to continue that. But we're obviously going to be developing that now in order to try and really get a hold of where the infections are and to suppress it as far as we can.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Dr. Lee.
Just Reshma, if I could just add, I mean, just on the prison, I think it is just worth underlining that, you know, we have been testing everybody there, and I think almost all of the prison staff and the prisoners have now been tested. I think we're still waiting for a smaller number of results to come back, but the most results are back, and we've only got those 2 negatives. So I do think it's worth just putting that into context.
Positives.
Yeah. Positives.
Okay, thank you very much, Governor. Can you provide us with an update on the UK military team and the work that they've been doing, if they are doing any work, what's happening with those personnel?
Yes, I can. So the team have been helping us behind the scenes, doing lots of virtual meetings whilst they were in isolation. They've been supporting on procurement of medical supplies. They've been working with NEOC. They've been working with hazard management as well around the sort of hurricane planning for a pandemic. So they've been doing a lot of work there. They've also been helping us with RFA Argus, the Royal Navy ship, which is coming to the region in June again, and they've been supporting us there, securing some helicopter cover from that ship when our own helicopter has to go off to the US for maintenance. So they've been very busy behind the scenes. I would want to note that one of the members of the team was weekly positive when we did all the testing. So he has now been tested and is negative. So he is now sort of out of isolation, but out of an abundance of caution, we have asked all the other team members to remain isolated for about the next 10 days. And that's completely in line with our very robust procedures for taking absolutely no risks with managing this COVID-19 threat, as we do absolutely everything to make sure we protect the health and well-being of everybody on our islands.
Okay, thank you very much. One final question. Now, you mentioned that the government isolation facilities are at capacity. We have a lot of people who still want to come home, and now we're opening it up to work permit holders. Maybe you might be able to answer, or the Premier might be able to answer. Are you looking at other facilities that can assist in isolating so that we can get people back home? Or is it that you're just going to, stagger the lights that are coming in?
Yeah, I mean, these are probably more issues for the government. I think we have Danny Coleman here, who's actively involved in a lot of the detail around that. So I'll ask Danny to to speak to that point.
Thank you, Governor. Thanks, Reshma. We currently are housing 112 people at the facilities. We are obviously trying to extend the current facilities because obviously we've taken Margaritaville offline, and one of the other facilities will also be coming offline pretty soon. So we're just extending the capacity we have internally at one of the facilities because it's currently housing essential services as well as some of the isolation. So that's what we're doing. But again, it's always one of those things we look for alternative locations to make sure that we do have capacity to bring people home that want to come home.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Danny. That's it from me.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Reshma. We go now to Nikki Watson from Cayman News Service.
Yes, hi. I have a question for the Health Minister. Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Yes, last week you said that your ministry might be helping people who are struggling to pay their health insurance. Can you expand on that a little bit, please?
Well, it's an exercise that we've put out there. Both the ministry and the stakeholders have been meeting we met a couple of times by Zoom, trying to figure out a way to ensure that our Cayman population remains covered. As we see it by now, most companies may have lost all their businesses, and ports are closed, airport and seaport. So we're anticipating that a lot of companies may have been put in the situation where they could not afford the policies for the employees that they now have, and that was our mindset as to the government trying to do its part to try to ensure that if one gets sick, that they had an insurance policy to fall back on. So we're trying to find a way we investigated the health insurance industry to try to find out how many persons were reporting that they were having difficulty trying to paying their premiums, and we got quite a bit of information based on feedback that we got, and it was very interesting to learn that some companies that we've probably heard by now were continuing to maintain the policies of their employees, which we applaud them for doing this, albeit it's not a lot of companies making a lot of money now. We know that the financial industry is still continuing to work virtually. They're working from home. So they have also kept up their policies. So we're trying to find a way as a government. We've put out forms. We've sent forms out for persons to collect and to send in, so we could try to gauge how many persons were in need of this service that we're intending to provide. I spoke with the caucus, and there's many iterations of how we can actually approach this, whether it's by paying individual policies, which is still being tossed around, or by assisting companies who are willing to keep on their employees, which is something the government is trying to encourage by giving companies possibly a grant. So this is ongoing. It's very fluid, and one that we hope that we can bring into effect very soon, so that we can save some of these policies before they lapse. I hope that helps.
Yes. You mentioned the forms. If people want to access those forms, where would they find it?
I understand it's on our website, the www.gov/coronavirus website. If not, they can also email the ministry at natasha.powell@gov.ky.
Thank you very much. I have a question. Thank you very much. That's plenty of that. Thank you. I have a question for the Premier about the work permit holders in isolation. Hello?
Yes, ma'am. I'm listening.
Okay. Right. Am I right in thinking that this is for active work permit holders only? It's not for new work permit holders?
Well,
so if I have a business and I want to hire somebody, can I hire somebody new?
Well, it would depend. And we'd have to look. I don't mean me personally or the panel, but I mean the officials would have to look at the particular circumstances. I know I've had people from the financial services industry in particular who have messaged me directly saying, you know, and from the medical community as well, saying, you know, we had a work permit in train before all of this came upon us, and the employee is anxious to come to Cayman, and as soon as Cayman reopens, you know, we really want to have that person in post. So I'm sure we'd look favorably at those sorts of instances as well. So it depends what you mean by a new work permit. We're actually trying to get business back up and going as much of it as we possibly can. And as long as the person is not going to be a drain on our limited resources, we'd like to have them back, or new ones for that matter.
Right, okay. And would that include dependents? So if the work permit holders are coming back, they can bring their dependents and also self-isolate?
Yes, as long as they meet those requirements, I see no reason why not. Why would we insist that they separate from their family if they want their family with them?
Right. Now, are these applications vetted by the work agency?
Actually, up until recently, it's actually been pretty much a sort of immigration-based decision, you know, and leading that particular bit about who do we let back on the planes, because that's really what it was, has been the Deputy Premier. As we broaden out now to deal with work permit holders, yes, I expect that advice will be gotten from the work agency.
Okay, and the last question is about cost. Can you say how much this costs? Is it a set amount, or is it by night? Does it vary from place to place, which facility they go to?
Oh, Lord. Yes, the amounts the government has been paying for the facilities has varied depending on the facility, and I would therefore presume that depending on where you decide to stay, you know, the fee would be based on what's been agreed by government. But I don't know what those numbers are off the top of my head. But what I will do is I will ask them to put out a statement about it, so that people are aware of what the terms of coming back, that is, are coming persons on work permit, will be, and what the cost will be, depending on which facility that you're actually at. Danny, can you help? I see Danny looking expectant. Can you help, Danny?
The costs of the...
Yeah, the decision is actually, well, the discussion's happening in the policy group as we speak. We were thinking about 2,600, I believe, and it is, again, covering the rooms as well as the actual food, but that will be finalised very, very soon. But that looks like it's in the region of about 2,600, I believe.
Okay. Is that for the 14 days?
Yes, I believe, but again, that is the number we have right now, but the policy group still have to agree on it. It may be, and just bear in mind that, of course, it's 14 days plus the test. So if people do come and have a positive test after that 14 days, that would be extended as well.
So if it's extended, do they have to pay more for that? Or is that...
Yes, they would have to pay more for that if by chance it was extended. For example, if they had another few more days or another week that they'd have to pay for, that would be... But we're breaking it down for cost per day for each individual.
Thank you very much. That's all my question.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Nikki. We're going to go back to April Cummings from Radio Cayman. April? April, are you there? Okay, we'll move on to Ralph.
Sorry, Donna, I am here. Apologies. I couldn't find the mute button again.
No worries. Go ahead.
This is sort of a follow-up on Danny's question, but I don't have a good understanding of, let's say it's a couple, whether both people stay in one room or whether they're required to be in separate rooms. So I'd just like a little bit of clarification about that. And then I have one other question, I think probably for the Premier.
Thank you very much for that question. I mean, again, it really depends. I mean, most couples are obviously together. We do have families together, so sometimes we'll have a 2-bedroom unit, and they may have up to 5 people in that unit itself, or there are obviously single rooms as well. So it really depends on the needs of the family or the individual.
Thank you very much, Danny. That helps.
Thank you.
And then the other question was for the Premier, again from the education front, but are we looking in, they've asked what phase are we potentially thinking about for reopening of our schools, the campuses that is, and also is there any consideration for some sort of phased approach where perhaps there are some in-school days and other remote days on letter days, et cetera?
I haven't been privy to any recent discussions about that, but the premise was that schools we would aim for the schools to reopen as normal for the start of the new school year towards the end of August, early September, assuming things continue to go swimmingly well.
And I assume you're referring to test results and that sort of thing as the criterion.
Always test results, yes.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, April, if that's it for you, we're going to go to Ralph at the Caymanian Times.
Good afternoon, members of the panel, and thanks for taking my questions. My first question is for the governor. I'm sure you're having discussions with your counterparts in the regions, with the other overseas territory governors. Can you say if they're having the same level of success with dealing with the crisis that we are having?
I think it's fair to say that Bermuda and Cayman are at a different stage because we have very sophisticated systems for testing. So both Cayman and Bermuda are doing a lot of testing, whereas the other overseas territories don't have that same capacity. So they have very low numbers of cases, but probably would have more if they were doing a lot more testing. But I think that everyone is following sort of broadly similar approaches, although Bermuda seems to be ahead of us in terms of their attitudes to opening up. Our approach is I think quite rightly more cautious here. So they're all different, and I don't think you can draw common patterns, but that testing is one big difference.
Okay, thank you. My final questions are for the Premier. Premier, September 1 has been reported by the international media as the day the borders are going to open up. Has Cabinet signed off on that date?
Well, we didn't actually put it that way. We said they would remain closed until the 30th of August.
Okay, so there's no official signing off on that day?
Well, again, it depends on how well things go, not just here, but elsewhere. I mean, if the virus continues to rage around us, how can we possibly open our borders and invite it to come after all the efforts we've made to keep it under control here? I mean, it's just practical things like that.
Okay. Just a follow-up here. And I think the reason for the question is that many visitors are trying to come back to this paradise. Mm-hmm. And so they're looking for a date that they can tentatively start looking for reservations and airline tickets. And so, if it's publicized overseas, that's a date they might start jumping ahead and contacting our local resorts here.
Well, given what I and everybody else is seeing in the United States, the September 1st reopening date is not looking good.
Okay, very well. And the final question is, what would you say to those residents who are fearful after hearing those results today?
Well, I think it's a good fear. Yeah, because our concern has been about complacency. But if you actually look at the statistics and you look at the graph, you'll see that positive rate is still very, very low. 1.4% of those tested have tested positive. So I believe as long as we keep the rate under 2, we are in a very good place. But it ought to urge the kind of caution that we have spoken about, and for people not to let down their guards, to not press for social gatherings and the allowance of people to gather in greater groups than 2, and for households to mix and have get-togethers and so forth, because that is what will almost certainly in the current circumstances cause the virus to take off again through the community. We are, as I said, we're hunting down the virus now, and as we find the positive cases, and they're all been asymptomatic through the screening process, isolate the individuals who have the virus, do contact tracing, and isolate those individuals, and hopefully that will allow us, as we continue this extensive testing process, to virtually eliminate the presence of the virus in this community, because we're going to continue testing for the foreseeable future.
Thank you. That's for me for today.
Actually, Ralph, Danielle Coleman, HMCI Director, wanted to address one of your questions.
Hi, Ralph. Just to go further back onto the overseas territory conversation, we are working very, very closely with our overseas territories. I understand the police commissioners are having a meeting this week for 2 days conference, but we also worked, this morning we had a very long meeting with them. We are all sort of sharing best practices, and they're also joining us tomorrow for our hurricane exercise, and we're sharing that material for them to be able to, use in their own territories as well. So that collaboration has been really, really positive. And again, we look forward to continue working with them and then joining us tomorrow. Thanks.
Thank you for that information, Meg. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Danny, as well. Thank you, Ralph, and the rest of the media. I do have some final questions. Premier McLaughlin, if you could just reiterate to the listening public a point that the Commissioner of Police made on Friday as it relates to kayaking, paddleboarding, and kite surfing on the days that you can exercise along the shoreline.
Well, you see, the commissioner put me in trouble because actually the regulations just speak to exercise and swimming. But the commissioner is in charge of enforcement, so he has indicated that those activities are permissible. And who am I to argue with him?
Along the shoreline, on the days that you can exercise. Thank you very much for that. Also, a final question, reusable mask distribution, who can speak to that? I believe there's a large number of reusable masks now in the now on island. How are they going to be distributed?
Yeah, we have given out almost 50,000 reusable masks to constituencies, and not only just to elected MLAs, but to anyone in any area that calls, and I believe that they have good intent to distribute these throughout their community, because it's not every community that you're going to get in. A lot of times what happens with the MLAs is that they get calls, they go to where they're called, or they go to where it's requested. And by the time they try to service the other areas of their community, the masks are finished. Sometimes you go with an intent of giving just 5 to each household, but you recognize there's 10 in it, so you got to give more. So there's a lot of things. So that's why we're going to continue trying to purchase as many as we can throughout the communities. I just wanted to say for Nikki, the information that we spoke about earlier in terms of the health insurance assistance plan that the government is working on, that the website that you can actually go on is www.dhrs.gov.ky. And you can also email HIC, which is the Health Insurance Commission, hic@gov.ky. And also hard copies are at Foster's and at ESSO.
Okay, thank you very much, Minister of Health. I believe Danielle Coleman has some more additional information as it relates to mass distribution.
Thank you, Donna. Just to add to the list that the Minister just mentioned, we are also doing distribution by police, community police officers, door to door, and there will be some at supermarkets, both the temporary ones as well as the cloth ones. So we really do encourage everyone to start wearing them if you're not wearing them already. And also our community emergency response teams are also distributing them to their communities. But yeah, there's a number of different ways that they'll be distributed. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Danielle. Any final words from members of our panel?
No, I'm fine.
You good? Okay. All right. So with that, we'd like to thank you, the public, of course, for joining us here for today's briefing. Also to our esteemed panel of guests and those in the room, a reminder to go online to gov.ky/coronavirus for answers to your questions. We invite you to join us again, hopefully by Friday, if all goes well, and planned at the Legislative Assembly meetings for tomorrow and Thursday. We will see you back here again then. For those watching, we leave you now with a look at today's regional and worldwide statistics on the coronavirus.